has come to settle gently over the house at Barton. I invite you now to lie back and let your breathing find its steady, patient tempo. Imagine, if you will, a low, warm light at the window, a stool by the bedside for a small cup of chamomile tea, a soft shawl folded on the chair, small comforts gathered like friendly hands around you. Tonight, I will tell a slow, comforting tale inspired by a family who lived for a while in a countryside cottage, a story of kindnesses, of quiet endurance, and of soft recoveries. It unfolds in rooms warmed by patience and in walks across wide, windy downs where the grass brushes ankles and the far hills listen. Once, in a country of green fields and hedgerow lanes, lived a family whose days were made up of simple, ordinary things. Their home was not large, but it was neat and steady, with wooden floors that sometimes creaked in a friendly way, and a little kitchen where bread was often baking. The mother's voice was warm and full of welcome. Her two daughters tended the books, the knitting, the music, and the small matters of the household that make a house feel like a home. In autumn, when the leaves fell in gentle showers, they would open a window and let the sharp, bright air come in, closing the shutters again when the sun ducked behind a cloud. In spring, when the hills turned a softer green, they walked on the downs and felt, as you do now when you relax, something calm and honest settle in the chest. One of the daughters had a thoughtful steadiness, a kind of quiet that made her a good listener. The other wore feeling on the surface. She loved boldly, laughed loudly, and felt everything keenly. Between them, there was affection like a rope thrown across a stream, strong enough to hold when weather came, flexible enough to bend around whatever drifted in the current. The mother watched them both with a grateful heart. She tended her small garden and had, in the marrow of her days, a deep wish that her girls might be safe and happy, that they might find people who knew how to be gentle with them and brave. The story I will tell is not rushed. It unfolds like a slow walk through a house at evening. First one room, then another, with time to notice the small details, a painting on the wall, the way the vase sits in the window catching the last light. In our tale, there are visits and letters, the quiet coming and going of neighbors, unexpected kindnesses, and occasional disappointments. Each scene soft and sure, as if painted in watercolors and left to dry slowly. One autumn, a new visitor arrived on the lane, a young man who liked to walk in the dawn and talk quietly by the hedge. He was gentle in his way, patient with the smallest things, and he watched the family's kindnesses with sincere admiration. He loved simple comfort, a good book laid open where someone might be reading, and old oak trees that kept their leaves late into the year. He had experienced a quiet grief earlier in life and had learned, slowly and soberly, the value of calm, steady affection. At first, the two sisters and the visitor were simply neighbors, then acquaintances, and then friends. There are friendships like clouds that come and go, and friendships like stones you keep in your pocket. This was the latter. The visitor's heart was steady and slow to warm, but when it did, he gave it generously. He admired the thoughtful sister's calm, and he took pleasure in the other sister's bright joy. He saw how both of them made the little cottage a safe place. There is a special kind of kindness that happens when someone goes out of their way to sit with you in the quiet. The visitor did that. He came with small bouquets of wildflowers in spring and warm stories in winter, and he began to share the evenings in the common room, listening more than speaking, but speaking when it mattered. Our days in this story are slow. There is no haste, only a comfortable rhythm, morning chores, the soft clinking of a teacup, a walk under open skies, the hush of reading before supper. Sometimes neighbors would come by with a basket of goods from their garden. Sometimes rain would stop a planned walk, and the house would be filled with low talking and music. The visitor would sometimes sit by the window and watch the weather as if he were reading the shape of the world. On one of those wet afternoons, the younger sister felt suddenly unwell. It began like a tiredness that would not lift, and then came a fever that made her sleep and wake odd hours. In our story, the illness is gentle in its harboring, not cruel and not sharp, but enough to pause plans and bring people close. When she grew quiet and weary, the whole family slowed to match her pace. The mother brought broth and warm flannels. The thoughtful sister sat nightly near the bed with a soft shawl about her shoulders, ready with cold water or a sip of tea, and with more patience than most people can muster, because patience is a gentle form of love. The visitor sat with them through long hours, sometimes speaking softly, sometimes listening. He, who loved steadiness and had found comfort in the household's morning routine, now found himself wanting to make every hour easier for the ill sister. His voice, gentle as a hand on someone's shoulder, soothed the edges of fear. There was a certain hush during those nights. When a house holds its breath for someone, even the floor stops complaining about the cold. People move carefully in the kitchen, and the cat sleeps longer than usual. The air feels soft as yarn. In this hush, the thoughtful sister learned new things about herself, how much she could do with quiet love, how a small presence can do as much as pages of strenuous words. She sat with her sister and read to her in low tones, the way someone might name colors in a garden that must be tended after a storm. The visitor would walk the footpaths and bring small finds, a sprig of lavender for a pillow, a warm stone from the hearth for cold hands. In time, the weary day passed. Health has its slow returns, and recovery arrived like a small tide that eventually lifts a boat, without a dramatic splash, but sure and steady. The sister slept deeper and longer. The fever broke. At first, the recovery was cautious. A comfortable cup of broth here, a brief walk out to the edge of the lane there. Those moments were treasured. They are the kind of moments you can feel now in your body. The small relief of a sore throat eased, the calming of breath into a slow rhythm, the first smile after many sorrowful ones. And there were other softer recoveries, too, of confidence, perhaps, or of the feeling that the world might still hold a measure of kindness. The mother's quiet rejoicing, the sister's thoughtful calm, the visitor's steady presence, each stitched into the household's fabric a little more courage. Evenings returned to their gentle pattern. Music, a little letter writing by lamplight, warm bread just out of the oven. People would sit and speak gently of simple things. A child's new boots, the last moon, the small success of a good day's harvest. If you listen with that soft attention that the thoughtful sister wears, you can hear that conversation now as a cushion, calm, accepting, and slowly joyful. Love in this house was not a sudden flare, but a kind of soft, steady warming. It finds its way into acts, a bowl set by the bedside, an extra blanket arranged on a chair, a quiet cup of tea brought without speaking. Those small acts can be the whole of a life's meaning. The visitor's affection for the family was exactly like that. Not a trumpet sound, but many little taps that come like rain on a roof and eventually fill the cistern. Months passed in such contented simplicity. The seasons kept their ordinary calendar, green hills and blooming hedgerows in spring, long sunny afternoons in summer, steady golden leaves in autumn. When the days were blustery, they liked to be indoors. When the sky was wide and clear, they welcomed walks that took them far along the downs. The thoughtful sister learned to draw her joy from the sea of ordinary comforts for all their richness. She learned to speak softly and firmly when good counsel was needed. The other sister, whose feelings still flared bright, but less dangerously than before, learned to pace her days and give herself time, and how to measure the height of happiness by the gentle blooms it let into the heart. We must not make our tale only about healing and warmth. There was also a season of disappointment, as happens to most people. A person in the story who had been complicated by vanity and mischief chose a path that hurt a friend. At first, that caused sorrow, as one might expect, but the gentle tests of time taught the family new compassion. They learned that some errors, while serious, can be weathered if people are honest and make steady reparation. They also saw that some wounds simply close slowly, and that kindness, offered without judgment and with a steady hand, is more likely to heal than anger. So in the evenings after that slow episode, the smart, warm house returned to what it had always been, a place where small mercies are daily offered. The visitor, who had at first watched in quiet admiration, gradually became part of their life, a friend, then a steady companion. The thoughtful sister, who had been the house's quiet center, found in him someone who admired her way of being, who loved the regularity of her life and the clarity in her speech. Their friendship deepened, like a root going down to water. I want to let you linger here a little longer on the idea of slow, ordinary good things. Imagine now the house in late afternoon light. The sugar bowl sits where it was set. A clock ticks in the corner in a patient, punctual way. The visitor and the family sit near each other with no hurry. Someone reads, someone else knits. A small dog curls up and dreams. Outside, the wind moves the leaves and the light in a soft, rhythmical way. There is no urgent need to change anything. The moment itself is its own small miracle, steady and sustaining. Whenever the family gathered, they gave thanks for small mercies. They did not speak loud prayers in our story, but they quietly acknowledged their gratitude in words that came like soft rain. Thank you for this bread. Thank you for your keeping. I am grateful for early light. The visitor loved these gentle remembrances, for they were honest and warm, not grand or overblown. Now, with the night spreading far and soft, you may notice how small and ordinary joys make room for larger peace. The family's life is not about grand adventure or sudden fate, but about the kind of courage that sits down and notices what is needed and does it. A hand to hold a cup, a patient answer, a smile after a long day. Those are the quiet victories. They build the house around the heart, and they hold it safe. Let your breath become the same as the slow, steady sounds of the hearth. A long inhalation like drawing in the warm air of home. A longer exhalation to let the warmth fill you. The listener in this tale, perhaps you, perhaps someone who knows that warmth, feels it now just as it is, soft, steady, trusted. If you would like a final picture to carry you toward sleep, imagine the visitor standing for a moment under the door lintel as twilight deepens. The mother watches the evening, her hands folded in her lap. The sisters move quietly about arranging the lamp and closing the day's books. Outside, the hills are silhouettes. The visitor walks up the path and pauses, looking back once at the house, then at the broad, friendly sky. He smiles slightly, a small, thankful smile for the shelter the family's kindness offered him. It has been a kind of shelter for you two tonight, and as you drift toward sleep, hold onto that small smile as you would a warm shawl. We are done now. Lay your head gently, breathe slowly, and let the steady hush of the house in the story carry you beyond the soft curtains of the evening. Imagine a window just half open, the cool air of the downs slipping in, carrying the scent of grass and the hush of distance. Let the calm down the spine and settle you. You are safe. You are cared for. The quiet of this country cottage, with its patient friendships, will follow you into sleep. When morning comes, it will be mild and true, and the world will be waiting with another ordinary, extraordinary day. Good night.